First Contact's consequence. The archivists of Centauri Station would later mark it as the day the galaxy's oldest civilization admitted fear. Supreme Elder Votal of the Collective stood before the Emergency Council, their crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. 10,000 years of careful documentation, of meticulous observation, had led to this moment, and to a conclusion that shook the foundations of their species' belief in its own supremacy. The Void Runners have breached the outer defense grid, Votal announced, their voice resonating through the chamber's neural interfaces. Our quantum barriers, the work of millions of years of advancement, failed in less than 6 hours. The assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced species stirred uneasily. The collective had guided galactic civilization since before most of their species had achieved spaceflight. They were the keepers of order, the architects of peace, the masters of technology so advanced it bordered on magic. And now, they spoke of failure. The analysis is conclusive, Votal continued, projecting the simulation into the shared consciousness space. The Void Runners adapt to every defense we deploy. They learn, they evolve, and they do so at a rate that defies our mathematical models. Traditional logic, our greatest strength, has become our vulnerability. They anticipate our perfect, predictable responses. Ambassador Xinra of the Silicon Mines, an artificial consciousness that had long served as the collective's closest ally, pulsed with calculated concern. What of the prediction engines? Surely the quantum computers can. They failed, Votal interrupted, an unprecedented breach of protocol that silenced the chamber. The Void Runners exist partially outside normal spacetime. Our computers cannot model what they cannot fully perceive. We need. The Supreme Elder's crystalline structure flickered, as if the very words caused physical distress. We need chaos. We need unpredictability. We need the humans. The reaction was immediate. The Silicon Mines went dark in protest. The ethereal confluence's representatives vibrated with disapproval. Even the youngest races represented in the chamber knew of humanity, the upstart species that had achieved faster-than-light travel through what the collective considered the equivalent of hitting their engines with a hammer until they broke physics. Supreme Elder, began Coordinator Lies of the ethereal confluence, their voice a whisper of pure thought. The humans are barely 1,000 years into their stellar age. They still wage wars among themselves. They make decisions based on what they call gut feelings rather than proper probabilistic analysis. Their ships are held together by improvisation and what they call duct tape. They are exactly what we need. Votal's interruption carried the weight of 10,000 years of authority. I have studied them. Their chaos is not random. It is adaptive. Their imperfection is not weakness. It is flexibility. They do not simply defy prediction. They thrive on it. The Supreme Elder interfaced with the chamber systems, and new data flooded the shared consciousness. Observe their history, time and again. Their greatest achievements come not from careful planning, but from desperate improvisation. Their first steps into space were driven by what they called a space race, a competition that prioritized speed over perfection. Their greatest scientific discoveries often came from mistakes, from experiments gone wrong, from what they call happy accidents. The data stream showed human ships, crewed by collective standards, performing maneuvers that violated dozens of safety protocols but achieved the impossible. It showed human scientists making intuitive leaps that bypassed centuries of methodical research. It showed humans surviving situations that every prediction model said should have been unsurvivable. The Void Runners adapt to perfection, Votal continued. They counter flawless logic with flawless responses. But humans don't play by those rules. They break them, bend them, reimagine them. They make mistakes, glorious, unpredictable mistakes that lead to solutions we would never calculate. Ambassador Xinra's consciousness pulsed with objection. The risks of involving such an unstable species are nothing compared to the certainty of extinction if we don't. Votal's form pulsed with intensity. I have already made contact with their United Earth government. Their response was characteristic. The chamber filled with a recording of the human ambassador's response. So let me get this straight. You've got space monsters that eat math for breakfast, and you need people who are good at winging it. Hold my coffee. We've got this. The Silicon Mines recoiled at the informality, but Vatal pressed on. They are already mobilizing. Their ships, crude, jury-rigged, and gloriously unpredictable, are being retrofitted for deep space combat. Their scientists are reviewing our data, not with the goal of understanding the underlying principles, but with what they call brainstorming, a chaos-driven approach to problem-solving that has already yielded 3 potential strategies we had never considered. And if they fail? Coordinator Lies asked. Then we fail having tried something new, Vatal answered, rather than dying in perfect, predictable adherence to protocols that no longer serve us. The Supreme Elder's form stabilized, taking on the crystalline clarity that marked their most serious pronouncements. The galaxy is about to learn what humanity has always known, that perfection is a cage, and chaos is the key that sets us free. As the council chamber erupted into debate, Vatal opened a private channel to the human ambassador. Your species has been cleared to operate throughout collective space. I must warn you. The Void Runners are unlike anything you've encountered. The humans' response came with what their species called a grin, a facial expression that could indicate anything from joy to predatory anticipation. Good. We'd hate to be bored. By the way, you might want to warn your people. Our solutions tend to be a bit explosive. As Vatal closed the channel, they reflected on the irony of the situation. The collective had spent millennia perfecting the art of predicting and controlling the future. Now their salvation lay in the hands of a species that took pride in their ability to improvise their way through chaos. The archive entry concluded with a note that would have been unthinkable just days before. On this day, the collective acknowledged not just the value of imperfection, but its necessity. The age of perfect order is ending. The age of beautiful chaos is about to begin. The price of pride. Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Daedalus watched as her engineering crew violated about 50 different collective safety protocols in under 5 minutes. The massive ship, a converted deep space mining vessel, hummed with improvised modifications that would have given any collective engineer a nervous breakdown, assuming their species was capable of nervous breakdowns. Status report, she called out, suppressing a smile as their collective advisor. Observer Zix visibly flinched at the sight of human engineers applying what they lovingly called percussive maintenance to a quantum harmonizer. We've got the phase cannons jury-rigged to the mining lasers, Chief Engineer Rodriguez reported, his hands covered in coolant fluid. It's not pretty, but it should give us triple the standard output. Though, we might want to fire them before they explode. Might want to. Zix's crystalline form flickered in distress. Commander, these modifications exceed all safety parameters. The energy output alone cooled. Could be exactly what we need. Chen interrupted, pulling up the tactical display. The Void Runners had already consumed 3 star systems, their impossible geometries warping space itself. Conventional weapons passed through them like light through fog. Conventional methods aren't working. Time to try something stupid. The tactical display showed the rest of the human fleet, a cobbled-together armada of modified civilian ships, each one breaking physics in its own unique way. The collective had provided them with their most advanced technology, expecting careful integration. Instead, the humans had treated it like a box of spare parts, combining it with their own tech in ways that defied both logic and safety regulations. Fleet Command, this is Daedalus. Chen broadcast. All ships, prepare for Operation Murphy. Commander, Zix interjected, I must object. The probability calculations for this strategy indicate. That's exactly why it might work. Chen grinned. These things adapt to patterns, right? They counter perfect strategies with perfect responses. So let's show them something perfectly imperfect. The plan was, by collective standards, insanity. The human fleet would deliberately create a cascade of system failures, using the resulting chaos of mixed energies and random fluctuations to disrupt the Void Runner's ability to predict and adapt. It was, as Rodriguez had put it, throwing cosmic spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. All ships reporting ready, Communications Officer Park announced. Though ready might be a generous term, the Horizon's captain says their quantum drive is making sounds that probably aren't too bad, and the Phoenix is running on coffee and prayers. Perfect. Chen nodded. Begin the approach. Randomize all shield frequencies, and someone please get Observer Zix a seat before they shatter from anxiety. The human fleet moved forward, each ship deliberately operating just on the edge of stability. Energy signatures fluctuated wildly as jury-rigged systems interacted in ways their designers had never intended. The Void Runners, vast shapes of impossible geometry, began to respond. But for the first time, their responses seemed hesitant. They're trying to predict our pattern, Chen observed. Good luck with that. We don't even know what we're about to do. Command. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. The phase cannon modifications are starting to overload. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they either fire or turn the ship into a very expensive firework. Perfect timing. Chen grinned. All ships. Execute Operation Murphy. And may God have mercy on our warranty claims. What followed would be described by collective observers as structured chaos. Ships began to fail in spectacular ways, each failure triggering a cascade of energy reactions that defied prediction. The Void Runners, faced with behavior that followed no logical pattern, began to falter. It's working, Park exclaimed. The Void Runners' formation is destabilizing. They can't adapt to what they can't predict. Chen watched as the impossible shapes began to twist in on themselves, their perfect geometries disrupted by the chaos of human ingenuity. Zix, remember how you said our modifications exceeded safety parameters? You were right. Fire everything. The Daedalus's jury-rigged weapons released a blast of energy that by all proper calculations should have torn the ship apart. Instead, the impossible beam struck the nearest Void Runner, the unstable energies ripping through its otherworldly form. Across the fleet, other ships fired similarly impossible shots, their modified weapons creating patterns of destruction that defied both physics and logic. Multiple Void Runner entities destabilizing, Park reported, his voice filled with disbelief. They're retreating. The impossible shapes began to withdraw, their perfect formations broken by humanity's deliberate imperfection. As they fled, Chen could have sworn they showed signs of something she never expected to see in such advanced beings. Confusion. In the aftermath, as damage reports flooded in and engineers began the impossible task of explaining what they'd done to their ships, Chen found Zix staring at the tactical display. I don't understand, the observer admitted. None of this should have worked. The modifications were unsafe, the strategy was illogical, the entire approach violated every principle of proper combat doctrine. That's humanity for you, Chen smiled, watching her crew begin repairs with their usual mix of creativity and questionable methods. We don't win because we're perfect. We win because we're really good at being imperfect in exactly the right way. The collective will need time to process this. Zix's form flickered thoughtfully. Our entire approach to warfare, to technology, to progress itself, it may need to be reconsidered. Take all the time you need, Chen replied, wincing as something in engineering made a sound that definitely wasn't in any manual. Just remember, sometimes the best solution isn't the perfect one. Sometimes it's the one that's just crazy enough to work. As the fleet limped home, their ships held together by improvisation and determination, Chen filed her report to Earth Command. It was short, simple, and perfectly human. Mission accomplished. Ships damaged but functional. Void Runners retreating. Request permission to make temporary repairs permanent. They work better than the original specs anyway. The response from Earth was equally characteristic. Permission granted. Send specs to collective. Let them try to figure out how we broke physics this time. When logic fails, Dr. Maya Patel stood in the heart of the collective's most advanced research facility, surrounded by technology that made Earth's finest achievements look like stone tools. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something obvious. The holographic displays showed the Void Runner's latest attacks, no longer just random raids, but coordinated strikes that were devastating even heavily defended systems. The probability matrices are clear, senior researcher Engspur of the Silicon Mines announced, their artificial consciousness projecting patterns of pure mathematics into the shared data space. The Void Runners have adapted to our chaos strategy. They are now incorporating random variables into their own attacks. Maya watched the replay of the latest battle, where human improvisation had failed against enemies that had learned to expect the unexpected. But something about the Void Runners' movements caught her attention. Something that didn't show up in any of the collective's sophisticated analysis. "They're afraid," she said suddenly, interrupting a detailed quantum probability discussion. The assembled researchers, organic, synthetic, and energy-based, all turned to her. Observer Zix, who had become humanity's primary liaison after the first successful battle, tilted their crystalline form in what Maya had learned was their equivalent of raising an eyebrow. "Dr. Patel," Zix began carefully, "the Void Runners are trans-dimensional entities operating on principles beyond conventional physics. They cannot experience fear as we understand it. Look at the pattern," Maya insisted, stepping into the hologram and gesturing at the movement of the impossible shades. "When our ships get close, they don't just adjust their tactics. They recoil. It's not a strategic withdrawal. It's an instinctive response." "Impossible," Angstver stated. "Our analysis shows." "Your analysis shows what you expect to see," Maya interrupted, earning a ripple of disapproval from the assembled minds. "You're looking for patterns in energy signatures, quantum states, tactical formations, but you're missing the emotional context." She manipulated the hologram, highlighting a particular sequence. "Here, when the UES Phoenix charged them with those jury-rigged quantum torpedoes, the Void Runners didn't counterattack immediately. They hesitated, not because it was tactically advantageous, but because they were surprised. They felt uncertainty." The Silicon Mines pulsed with skepticism, but Maya pressed on. "We've been thinking about this all wrong. We assumed they were perfect logical entities, operating on principles we couldn't understand. But what if they're more like us than we thought? What if they have emotions, instincts, fears?" "An interesting hypothesis," Zix admitted, "but how would this help us? Even if they do experience emotions, we cannot. We can use it." Maya's eyes lit up with the kind of intuitive leap that the collective both admired and feared in humans. "We've been trying to outthink them, but what if we need to outfeel them? They adapted to our chaos because they learned to expect it, but they can't adapt to emotional responses because they don't understand them." She turned to the assembled researchers. "When you first contacted humanity, you called us unpredictable. But our unpredictability doesn't come from chaos. It comes from emotion. We make choices that defy logic because we feel they're right. We take risks not because they're tactically sound, but because we're angry, or hopeful, or desperate." The facility's AI projected a series of calculations showing the impossibility of quantifying emotional responses in combat scenarios. But Maya smiled, recognizing the flaw in their approach. "That's exactly my point," she said. "You can't calculate emotion. Neither can they. That's why it works." She pulled up the battle footage again. "Look at their response when the Phoenix's crew sacrificed their ship to save that colony. The Void Runners didn't just fail to predict it. They couldn't process it. The concept of sacrifice, of choosing certain destruction to save others, it violated their understanding of existence." The assembled minds were silent, processing her words. Finally, Zix spoke. "You are suggesting we base our strategy not on tactical advantage or mathematical probability, but on feelings." I'm suggesting we stop trying to outthink beings that exist partly outside our universe, Maya replied. Instead, let's show them something they've never seen before, the full range of human emotion. Our anger, our hope, our love, our determination. Let's show them what it means to fight not just for survival, but for everything we hold dear. The collective council will never approve such an approach, HFY stated. It defies all established protocols. Then we don't ask for approval, Maya said, her voice firm. We show them results. She turned to Zix. You wanted humanity's help because we're unpredictable. Well, this is how we do it. We don't just think outside the box. We feel outside it. She began typing rapidly on her datapad, her fingers flying as she outlined her plan. We need to modify our ships again, but not just with technical improvements. We need to emphasize the human element. Let our crews act on instinct, fight with passion, make choices based on moral conviction rather than tactical advantage. And if it fails? Zix asked, though Maya noticed their crystalline form had taken on a slight hue that she'd learned indicated curiosity. Then we fail being true to ourselves, she answered. But I don't think we will. The Void Runners adapted to our chaos because chaos can be predicted, given enough data. But human emotion, that's something they can never fully understand or predict. As the facility erupted into debate, Maya sent a private message to Commander Chen. I think I've figured it out. The Void Runners aren't just mathematical entities. They're living beings. And like all living beings, they can feel fear. It's time to show them why humanity's emotions have always been our greatest strength. Chen's response was immediate and characteristic. Finally, someone else who sees it. Get me a battle plan that lets my crew be human, and I'll show these dimensional horrors why picking a fight with Earth was their biggest emotional mistake. Maya looked around at the advanced technology surrounding her, and for the first time since the crisis began, she felt truly hopeful. The collective had spent millennia advancing their technology and perfecting their logic. Now it was time to show them that the path to victory might not lie in perfection, but in embracing the beautiful, terrifying, unpredictable power of human emotion. The breaking point. The combined fleet hung in the darkness of the Arcturus sector, a strange mix of sleek collective vessels and modified human ships that looked like they'd been assembled from spare parts and optimism. On the bridge of the UES Daedalus, Commander Chen watched as her tactical display showed the approaching Void Runner fleet, larger than any they'd encountered before. They're adapting faster than we anticipated, Supreme Elder Votel's holographic form announced, their crystalline structure pulsing with concern. Our predictive models suggest they've developed countermeasures to both our conventional weapons and your unconventional methods. Chen smiled, noting how Votel had diplomatically avoided using terms like reckless or impossible to describe human tactics. Good thing we're not planning to use either of those approaches. Then, she nodded to Dr. Patel, who had insisted on being present for this battle. The scientist stepped forward, her dark eyes bright with purpose. The Void Runners have been studying us, learning our patterns, but they've been focusing on our actions, not our motivations. That's about to change. The tactical display updated, showing the positions of the human collective fleet, rather than the precise formations preferred by the collective or the controlled chaos of earlier human strategies. The ships were arranged in what appeared to be a completely random pattern. What you're seeing isn't random, Maya explained to the confused alien observers. Each ship is positioned according to the emotional state of its crew. We're not just fighting with technology anymore. We're fighting with our hearts. Impossible to quantify, Observer Zix objected, though their tone held more curiosity than dismissal. How can you coordinate a battle strategy based on something as variable as emotional states? That's exactly the point, Chen grinned. We're not coordinating. We're feeling. Every ship, every crew, they're going to act on their strongest emotions. The Void Runners can adapt to patterns, but they can't adapt to pure human instinct. The enemy fleet drew closer, their impossible geometries twisting space itself. But this time, instead of trying to maintain formation or execute complex maneuvers, the human ships began to move in ways that defied any tactical logic. The UES Phoenix, its crew still burning with the loss of their original ship, charged straight at the largest Void Runner concentration. The UES Horizon, driven by its captain's fierce desire to protect the colonies behind them, took up a defensive position that seemed to ignore basic strategic principles. Each ship, each crew, moved not according to battle plans but according to their deepest emotional drives. "This is madness," Vaughtel observed, but there was a note of wonder in their voice. "This is humanity," Maya replied softly. "We're not fighting with our ships anymore. We're fighting with our souls." The battle that followed defied description in any tactical manual. Human ships moved in patterns driven by rage, hope, fear, and love. When the Void Runners attempted to predict and counter their movements, they found themselves facing opponents whose actions couldn't be reduced to tactical algorithms. "They're trying to adapt," Six reported, their crystalline form flickering with excitement. "But they can't establish a pattern because there isn't one." Each human response is unique, driven by emotional contexts they can't compute. Chen watched as her fleet engaged the enemy. The UES Defiant, its crew fueled by righteous anger, executed a maneuver that should have torn the ship apart, but instead broke through the Void Runner's defenses. The UES Hope, driven by its captain's desperate need to prove humanity's worth, discovered a way to disrupt the enemy's dimensional shifting by essentially hitting them with a concentrated burst of human determination. "How is this possible?" Vaughtel demanded, watching as the impossible shapes of the Void Runners began to distort and fracture. "Your ships are violating every principle of combat doctrine." "They're not following doctrine," Maya explained, her eyes shining. "They're following their hearts. Every decision, every action, it's coming from a place the Void Runners can't understand. Pure human emotion." The breaking point came when the UES Memory, named for Earth's lost colonies, drove straight into the heart of the Void Runner fleet. Its crew, driven by grief and the unshakable human need to ensure no one else would suffer such losses, initiated what they called a feedback loop of feelings. They bombarded the nearest Void Runner not with energy weapons or quantum distortions, but with concentrated emotional data, recordings of human laughter, crying, love, loss, hope, and despair. The effect was devastating. The Void Runner, faced with the raw intensity of human emotional experience, began to unravel. Its perfect geometry couldn't maintain coherence when confronted with the beautiful chaos of human feelings. "They're retreating," Park announced, his voice cracking with joy. "The whole Void Runner fleet is falling back." Chen watched as the impossible shapes fled, their retreat marked by patterns that seemed almost frightened. "They finally found something they couldn't adapt to," she said softly. "Something they couldn't predict or control. Human emotion." Maya nodded. "The one force in the universe that defies all logical analysis." In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and crews celebrated their impossible victory, Vaughtel's hologram regarded the humans with new understanding. "We sought your help because you were unpredictable," they said. "We never understood that your true strength lay not in your chaos, but in your capacity to feel." "Emotion isn't a weakness," Chen replied, watching her crew embrace each other, cry, laugh, and process the battle in all their messy human ways. "It's the force that drives us to exceed our limits, to defy impossible odds, to fight not just for survival, but for everything that makes life worth living." Maya added softly, "The Void Runners could adapt to our technology, our tactics, even our chaos. But they couldn't adapt to the one thing that makes us uniquely human, our ability to feel deeply and act on those feelings." As the fleet regrouped and began their journey home, Chen sent a message to Earth Command. "Victory achieved through application of concentrated humanity. Recommend new tactical doctrine. Let them feel why you never mess with Earth." The response came back quickly. "Understood, Commander. Remind the collective, They wanted humanity's help. Well, they got all of us, hearts and souls included. Legacy of the Reckless. One standard galactic year after the Battle of Arcturus, the Grand Archive of the Collective received an unprecedented update. For the first time in 10,000 years, the fundamental principles of civilization were being rewritten. Supreme Elder Votel stood before the Emergency Council, but this time their crystalline form glowed with an emotion that, until recently, they wouldn't have admitted to feeling. Hope. The Void Runners have withdrawn beyond the galactic barrier, Votel announced, their voice carrying notes of both relief and wonder. But that is not why I have called this session. We are here to acknowledge a truth that will reshape our understanding of progress itself. The chamber's neural interfaces hummed as representatives from across the galaxy attended, both physically and virtually. Among them sat Commander Chen and Dr. Patel, now serving as Earth's official ambassadors to the Collective. They exchanged knowing glances as Votel continued. For millennia, we defined advancement through perfection. We sought to eliminate variables, to achieve absolute control through pure logic and flawless technology. We were wrong. Votel's form shifted, displaying patterns that mimicked human neural activities, a change that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The humans didn't just save us from the Void Runners, Votel continued. They saved us from our own stagnation, in embracing what we saw as flaws. Emotion, intuition, imperfection. They showed us a new path forward. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing scenes from the past year. Collective scientists working alongside human engineers, learning to trust intuition alongside calculation. Silicon Mind researchers studying human art and music, discovering patterns in emotion that pure logic had never revealed. Even the ethereal confluence had begun, incorporating human-inspired randomness into their thought processes. Maya stepped forward, invited by Votel to address the council. A year ago, you saw humanity as a chaotic element in your ordered galaxy. You weren't wrong, but you misunderstood why chaos matters. It's not about being unpredictable. It's about being alive. She gestured to the display, which showed a human colony where collective citizens had begun to settle, drawn by the vibrancy of human culture. Your technology gave us the stars, but our emotions showed you why they matter. You taught us how to break the light barrier. We taught you why it's worth breaking. Commander Chen joined her, her uniform now bearing both Earth and collective insignias. The Void Runners couldn't adapt to human emotion, because emotion can't be reduced to algorithms. Every feeling is unique. Every heart beats its own rhythm. That's not a flaw in the system. It is the system. The display shifted to show the latest breakthrough. A hybrid chip design that incorporated both collective precision and human intuition. Its quantum core was regulated not just by advanced AI, but by the emotional states of its crew. The impossible had become standard operating procedure. We are entering a new age, Votel announced. One where perfection is no longer our goal. Instead, we seek something far more valuable: growth. The humans have shown us that true advancement comes not from eliminating variables, but from embracing them. Observer Zix, their crystalline form now permanently tinted with what they had learned to recognize as enthusiasm, added, "Our latest studies suggest that the Void Runners didn't retreat just because they couldn't predict human emotions. They retreated because they encountered something they had never imagined possible, a species that grew stronger through imperfection." The council chamber erupted in a very uncollective-like burst of discussion. Some representatives had even begun experimenting with human-style expressions of emotion, leading to what Chen had dubbed the galaxy's most awkward learning curve. There will be challenges ahead, Votel acknowledged. The galaxy remains full of dangers we cannot predict. But perhaps that is exactly as it should be. The humans have taught us that it is not certainty that makes us strong. It is how we face uncertainty. Maya smiled, remembering how far they'd come from those first desperate days. You know what the really funny thing is? When you first contacted Earth, you thought you were reaching out to chaos. But what you really reached out to was passion. Humanity isn't defined by our unpredictability. We're defined by our ability to feel deeply and act on those feelings. A distinction we now understand, Vattel agreed, and one that will shape the future of galactic civilization. The archive entry for this era will note, the greatest advancement in our history came not from achieving perfection, but from learning to embrace imperfection. As the council session concluded, Chen and Maya walked through the collective's capital city, now vibrant with signs of human influence. Art galleries displayed works that combined collective precision with human emotion. Research centers hummed with the energy of scientists who had learned to trust their hunches. Even the architecture had begun to change, incorporating elements of controlled chaos that somehow made the city feel more alive. "Did you ever think," Chen asked, watching a group of young collective citizens attempting to understand the human concept of dancing, that our greatest contribution to the galaxy would be teaching ancient civilizations how to feel? Maya laughed, a sound that still startled nearby collective citizens, even after a year of exposure to human expressions. "I think we taught them something even more important. We taught them that the universe isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to be experienced in all its messy, beautiful glory." The final entry in the Grand Archive for that historic day read, "The legacy of humanity's reckless nature will echo through the ages. They came to us as allies in war, but they became teachers of life itself. Through them, we learned that true wisdom lies not in eliminating chaos, but in finding the courage to dance with it. The future belongs not to those who seek perfection, but to those who dare to feel, to fail, to love, and to grow." In the end, the species we once saw as too emotional, too unpredictable, too human, showed us that these were not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be embraced. And in doing so, they gave us back the one thing we had lost in our pursuit of perfection, the ability to evolve.